Chapter 12 Scattered Memories of Childhood. Needless to say, one of my vivid memories at age 5 is that I didn't want to go to take a shower. Grandma, in return, ripped my favorite Aladdin shirt that I got from Willie in order to force me to go take a shower. I felt a great loss. Grandma helped me associate with that vicious act that showers are not something fun, just like if you punish your kids upon doing something bad by going to a museum. To this day, I hate taking showers and I don't mind going stinky for days. As a result, I conserve water, which is how I contribute to society, but I dissatisfy those people around me. For some reason, I don't feel my own odor anyway, probably because I've had countless cases of ear infections to the point that it has caused damage to my sense of smell. Grandma instilled on me punishments that would be unjust in today's world, in the modern understanding of discipline of children, I mean. But to her defense, her mind was stuck in communism, stubbornly being under the impression that everything had to be orchestrated like in the army. There's no second guessing, there's no self-questioning, and there's no impertinence allowed, sometimes for being reluctant to eat the full meal she cooked, as she was conserving every little leftover due to knowing what it felt like without food during the Holocaust. She would threaten to drop the plate on my head, and if I continued with the resistance, she would lock me in the bathroom that was attached to the laundry room as I was crying, after she beat me, but the plate was not dropped on my head after all. While being in those conditions, I would swear to myself that I would never hurt my child, if I would ever have one, and let my 18th birthday rush its way towards me. Nonetheless, due to her being exposed to Holocaust conditions, Grandma ate food with her hands, without forks and knives as was proper, putting me under this stinky habit so that I eat very messy myself, and it makes people surrounding me uncomfortable. In order for me to eat properly, I have to put in an amazing amount of conscious effort, but unfortunately some people don't understand. When I was around 6 years old, Grandma and I went on a trip to a place called Gitit. There was a plaza where she hung around with a group, and next to it was a gated zoo of only crocodiles. I quietly drifted from the group and stared intently at the open jaws of the crocodiles. It was fascinating, I must say. Grandma once read me a story of brushing a crocodile's teeth, and therefore I honestly thought that the crocodiles were a friendly bunch. I slowly started climbing the fence, and from afar there was a guard that was screaming at the top of his lungs, running hysterically with his hands outstretched towards me. I looked at him from the distance and got scared of him rather than the slowly crawling, open-jawed crocodiles who I thought liked me so much that they couldn't wait to say hello and allow me to pat their scales and brush their pointy teeth. As I held onto the fence, out of being startled by the guard, I let go, fell on my buttocks, and started crying. As the guard was huffing and puffing and doubled over out of exhaustion and running, he looked rather relieved that I was on the concrete cement, crying, and not over the fence. "Eforim shelach, where are your parents?" he demandingly screamed at me to know, and raised his hands questioningly towards the direction of the plaza. I stopped crying immediately, unhappy for his causing my displeasure, folded my hands as I sat on the ground, and daringly told him, "Lo meret, ani koeset," not saying, "I'm mad." He prevented me from the joy of petting the crocs, and I was mad. The guard shook his head in deep disapproval, picked me up from the ground, and invited me to climb onto his neck. Himself, he walked to the plaza with me where everybody was. I felt in seventh heaven. Who needs the super crocodiles when you get to be on a stranger's neck? Instead of continuing to panic and screaming at me, he resolved to reach a resolution, a quiet, sly one at that. When he got to the plaza with me on top of him, the guards started clapping and stepping one foot in front of the other as if to a rhythmical beat of the song he made up, singing, "Lemī sheyechet hayalda hazoti," to whom belongs this girl, while pointing at me. Step 1, 2, 3, clap. Step 1, 2, 3, point. This is how we just deal with other people's negligence and idiocy. Grandma was preoccupied as she didn't understand Hebrew while everybody was watching the freak with a 6-year-old mischievous child. I saw my grandmother in the distance, and as I was having too much fun, I decided to cover my face with one hand and hold the guard's forehead with another so that my grandma wouldn't recognize me. The guard noticed what I was doing and my intentions behind it, so he was moving a lot more sharply, so I would have to hold on to his forehead with 2 hands. Finally, Grandma noticed. Alina, she pronounced every syllable of my name in angry astonishment while putting her hands on her hips and pursing her lip at me. The guard understood that was the brat's name on his neck and demanded me off while I was very hesitant about the act. Dibula, where have you been? This time, Grandma demanded to know. I pointed in the direction of the crocodiles and said, "S крокодилами игралась," played with the crocodiles, and shrugged as if it was a casual thing. Grandma couldn't quite comprehend the seriousness of that expression and looked apologetically at the guard, who just shrugged back at Grandma as he couldn't quite explain to her what really had happened because of the language barrier, and I was obviously not going to tell her either. This story, although funny in its nature as it ends well, should be a learning lesson to everyone that, upon reading stories to children about animals, they better let them know which animals are predators. Another highlight of my 6-year was when my dad drilled me with the Russian language. He taught me the alphabet and forced me to read Russian newspapers about stupid Yeltsin. Why in the world would a 6-year-old be interested in Yeltsin, the president of Russia, and all the conflicts that surrounded him? Let's read some kid stories about crocodiles. But no, I had to read those advanced expressions and delve my 6-year-old mind into newspapers. Also, he forced me to acquaint myself with Russian grammar and write essays for him. The grammar is so complicated to the point that I cried in hysterics for him to let me go out and play. But Dad had no compassion. He downloaded for me keyboard and games to teach me how to type with a Russian keyboard. Once I learned, the next level was to write him an essay on the computer. When I wrote to him an essay about some star, he made fun of my lack of grammar and childish ways of expression. I did not take it personally. I laughed with him, while Mother tried to figure out why he was laughing when I never was in a Russian school anyhow. In Russia or the Soviet Union, they drill the kids mercilessly, no matter which age. Therefore, Dad gave me no slack when he himself was a C average student, but his expectations of me were over the top to the level of unreasonableness. However, let's put my father to the test in Hebrew. Living there about 25 years, he still doesn't speak it well. To him, it is more important that I spoke Russian than him competing with me in speaking Hebrew. Nevertheless, Dad always spoke to me with elevated concepts and language not quite to my ears. Another interesting story: when I was 6, I was still going to kindergarten. The kindergarten teachers left me for another year despite being somewhat like a prodigy because my birthday is at the cutoff, December 7th. It was around the month of Adar, March, when the holiday of Purim comes, where you are supposed to dress up and give mishloach manot to the one that it turned out to be your person through drawing names from the hat. I dressed up as the Little Mermaid. I was so pretty, but the problem was that it was the day before the actual holiday, and nobody but me was dressed up. I started crying for being so distinguished, but it was the day when God made me special. When I was still 6, Vala, my grandmother's cherished friend who later died from lung cancer, taught me how to play the keyboard. We sang folk songs in Russian, but there was a particular song that I played and sang while practicing that mother played on the violin when she was young. Mom didn't live with us at that time. She lived for a time with dad in Ashkelon and then moved to Tel Aviv to live with Zaiki, her new Arabic boyfriend, later on, and from time to time visit me. While I played, Mom sang along. I felt that I was controlling the movement of her voice chords as I played each note, which made me feel in charge of Mother's being. The song was about a free bird. Because I was the kid who played the keyboard in the neighborhood, we made performances in which I was the leader playing the keyboard. All the adult neighbors would come and watch us. I had a crew, my friends, who sang. My grandma was good at gathering into our house all of our surrounding Russian community children and letting us be independent and cook kebabs for ourselves, play and celebrate the Israeli holidays in each other's birthdays. While all the children's parents were at work, Grandma was free to watch over us, but she let our preoccupations flow independently. This way, I had a chance to develop many friendships, but few particular ones I called my close friends. Sometimes, Vala's son, Felix, whom I considered as an older brother, would come and play with me. He would pick me up in the air and fly me across the distance. He was very tall. Oh, how I wished to have an older brother that would stand up for me throughout my young and adult lifetime. Felix was also technologically savvy and would set up the computer for us where I would play the levels of Aladdin, Hugo, The Lion King, Simba, and the Jungle Book Mowgli with Mom. I would tell Mom to press the key to jump as I navigated the Hugo, Simba, or Mowgli character, and it would jump. Tell Mom to hit the space bar, and Aladdin would slay the villains with his knife, thus passing all the levels. On top of that, I also learned how to professionally draw with a guy named Volodya. He was weird, though, because he taught me how to first draw naked figures and then dress them up. He was an amazing artist with amazing techniques, but a bit filthy-minded. I often also played with Ron, who was mentioned earlier. He was the Podolsky grandchild of Abrasha and Alla, who were related to me through my great-grandmother Sima, who was Grandma Runya's sister, and Alla was Runya's daughter. My grandma also taught me how to swim, which I picked up really fast. My childhood was mostly blissful, although there were some dark moments with Mom missing, Dad missing, and Grandma being abusive. Around that year, Mother officially lived in Tel Aviv. She had a job and a boyfriend there named Zaiki, mentioned earlier. One day, Mom brought him over to the house in Ma'ale Ephraim and was making out with him on a great-grandmother's bed. They were on top of each other when both of my grandmas were not at home, while all happened straight in my mature, childish presence. I sensed something wrong. I told Mom that if she wouldn't stop, I would tell Grandma, but she didn't care, and I never did tell Grandma. To myself, I thought that I would never want to be as promiscuous as Mother was, and I followed through with it. I am careful with my relationships and will keep my virginity until marriage, which we will talk about in great length in my sequel. On that day, there was a basketball in the house. Zaiki felt self-conscious for limping because he fought the war in Iraq in 1991. So he wanted to show off his manly strength to me and told me to throw the ball into his fist. The ball was well inflated. We were in the living room, which in Hebrew is salon. He was on the couch and I was in front of him standing. I threw the ball straight into his fist with great aim, as was instructed with all of my strength, and the ball bounced back straight into my forehead and back into his hands. Zacky's face flinched, and his hands stretched towards me in concern. I stood like a sturdy tower, did not even hiss a noise of pain, but my head quite hurt. This is how I have taken blows of pain since a young age. I make myself unfeeling, desensitized, unmoving, undeterred, unhindered. I just rubbed my forehead, and that was the end of the story. Many do complain that I reason my pain through thought and not feeling. It is probably resistance to vulnerability, inability to associate feelings to my struggles and pains. While Zyke wanted to show off his manhood, I showed off my perpetual invincibility. My last memory at 6 was when I had continuous problems with her ear infections. Grandma was strongly advised for me to get an operation that would put tubes into my ears that would dry up the liquid in my ears that caused ear infections. Every time I went to the community swimming pool, I had to put in an earplug so as not to overwhelm the function of those inserted ear tubes. With that, they took my tonsils out because they served no function and because I constantly was fighting cases of colds. When I woke up from the operation, there was a tube with dripping liquid hanging beside me, and a needle was attached and plastered into me. All the wires were connected to it, and every time a drop would fall inside that cylindrical tube, it would make a beep sound on some machine. When I woke up, my head started swirling around as if I had been on a roller coaster, and I quite couldn't connect my state of being to the moment. I had a soul reflection when I asked my grandma, "Где я? Кто я? Что я? Where am I? Who am I? What am I?" I was wondering the reason and the significance of my state of being. Do we ever do that? When I was 7, Mom secretly smoked in the porch. Grandma wouldn't allow smoking in the vicinity of the house, but Mom wouldn't listen. The phone rang for Mom, and Mom gave me the cigarette to hold for her while she talked on the phone. I looked at the swerving paths of the smoke from the cigarette with great childish wonderment as to why Mother was hooked on this stuff. I took a whiff and I became seriously lightheaded. Remembering that moment, when I was around 10 or 11, I hung around friends who had already started smoking at 12. I asked them the same question. Why are you so hooked on this? They said, you should find out for yourself and try this, extending the cigarette towards me. I remembered the feeling at 7 and refused to follow the peer pressure. I have only tried the detrimental substance once and never allowed myself to try it ever again. However, although Mom made efforts to visit me, she didn't like to come to us as it was very apparent on her because all the three of them, Grandma, Great-Grandma, and Mom, would fight, sometimes even fist fight. I would go under the table and wouldn't dare to look. Around 1996, Uncle Willie came to visit us. I did everything with him. I pretended to read the newspapers with him in Russian, as I was taught to read newspapers before, but I didn't quite read as fast as he did. But out of love to him, I would feign interest because this time I was not forced to read newspapers. In one casual walk with Willie and Grandma, I was awkwardly lagging behind, and Grandma was wondering as to why I was so not as athletic as I should be, walking so slowly. Lo and behold, they found out that I have inherited a mild form of Mother's Charcot-Marie tooth disease. Meanwhile, around 1st and 2nd grade, 97-98, Mother decided to visit my aunt in the United States and was missing for 7 months, unawares to me, as I waited for her to visit me, mistakenly thinking that she was soon to come to me.